Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventure Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. Hey everyone, today we are going to go to Minneapolis with travel writer Debbie Stone. You know, you hear Debbie on Big Blend Radio all the time, and of course on her show, Global Adventures with Debbie Stone. You can read her articles. Just go to blendradioandtv.com and nationalparktraveling.com, and we're excited to talk about Minneapolis. Why? Because this is a landmark city in America, and, you know, we've got people like Prince that come from Minneapolis, and we got Mary. We got a lot of things going on in Minneapolis, but also it is part of the Jefferson Highway. And the Jefferson Highway, as many of you know, Nancy and I here at Big Blend Magazines are creating the very first guide, and maybe it's out by the time you hear this. Who knows? But we're doing the very first digital travel guide for the Jefferson Highway. The Jefferson Highway was created in 1915, and it runs from Winnipeg in Manitoba, Canada, through Minneapolis. That's our first city, right, for the Jefferson Highway, all the way down to New Orleans. It is America's very first vacation route. It's also known as the Palms to Pines Highway, and as I said, created in 1915, and it was the idea of the editor of Better Homes and Gardens. So we're very honored to be part of this history of this revival of this amazing highway that goes through the heartland of America. It's America's first international highway because of going through Winnipeg. And so, hey, let's step off into Minneapolis. So welcome back, Debbie. How are you? Fire Monkey, we call you that.
Doing well. Doing well, and excited to talk about Minneapolis. I think a lot of people know Minneapolis, but I don't know how many people have actually gone there to visit, to explore it as a destination. I had been in and out of Minneapolis many years ago and in the airport, but I really hadn't taken the time to spend quality time there. And this was a great opportunity. It was a good opportunity since I was going to the state of Minnesota. And I thought, I'm going to land in Minneapolis, but I'm going to spend some time here and figure out what's going on and see if everything they say is true about this city, which I feel, and you'll read in my story, that it really is a wonderful, vibrant city with a lot of art and a lot of culture, and just a great foodie town. And anyway, so this walking tour that I took with Minneapolis City and Skyway Tours was a great introduction to downtown Minneapolis. So I encourage anybody who's going there who would like to kind of get a real sense of the downtown corridor, of some of its history, of the building, of the buildings that are there, the outdoor and the indoor sculpture that's there. So this particular company, which is run by owner guide Jessica Schugel, is a wonderful introduction, like I said, to the city.
I love this, and I was raised in South Africa and Kenya, and a little time in England, and all I knew about Minneapolis was that there's snow, it borders Canada, and Mary Tyler Moore came from. And that's what I said at the beginning, like, I know Mary came from there. And then people are probably thinking, Jesus' mom. I'm sorry, I'm talking about Mary Tyler Moore. And of course, being a product of the late 70s and 80s, Prince, come on, man. So I had that kind of thing. And I always wondered about, what are you doing in the snow? And Prince, like, this is an epic thing. But, and really, Nancy and I have done a little bit in Minnesota, mostly parks. Sometimes they were frozen and sometimes they were unfrozen with some mosquitoes, which was fine because it's so beautiful. Minnesota is an amazing state, so naturally gorgeous. And this, I believe you went there. Was this part of your trip when you were doing another national park? Like you had to land there to get to another national park? I'm just trying to think back to, because you jet set all over the place. So, when you went to Minneapolis, I think you were on your way to a national park, one of them.
Yeah, we were going to Voyager up in International Falls area.
See,
and so
I
we
thank you
landed
for
there and then
me.
drove.
Because I always get Isle Royale and Voyager's messed up. So thank you. You
Yes,
saved me on that.
yes.
But yeah, I mean, so this is something for people to think about too, that this would be like you're flying in for that, but spend a couple days in the city and a walking tour like we talk about on all the podcasts with you. When you hit a city or, no matter how big or small or a town, a historic walking tour does what even a foodie tour, like we've talked about previously as well, will give you the history of the town, of the city. And it looks like this one, which is, again, everyone can go to minneapoliscitytours.com. And also Debbie's link is in the episode notes. It's all up on blendradioandtv.com. So you want to tell us a little bit about, like, did you find things that you were unexpected by taking this because of the culture, like really this history of this place that you were like, wow, it seems like Minneapolis is far away from the rest of us in the West or in the Southwest or even the Southeast. But this is really like, I think the Midwest has history that blows my mind every time I delve into it.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it's a very vibrant city, but everything I found there was a surprise. I mean, other than, of course, I knew Mary Tyler Moore, I knew Prince, I knew a few things.
Mm-hmm.
I had also, and the Guthrie Theater I had been to many, many years ago as well, that really the coolest thing about Minneapolis, and this is great because, I mean, they do get pretty harsh weather in the winter, but they have the largest contiguous skyway system in the world. So it has these walkways that connect 80 city blocks and span more than 9 miles, which is phenomenal because you can be inside and go from building to building, which is one of the reasons it's great in the wintertime because you can get around without having to deal with the elements, So I was really, I knew that this was there, but I was really astounded to actually travel through these skyways, through these walkways with Jessica, and not only that, but to see what all the little surprises and gems that are located in these buildings, and the history that really it was fascinating to me. And the architecture is a whole nother ball of wax in terms of the fact that there's a lot of Art Deco there, which is wonderful, and they have managed to keep elements of the buildings and to keep this history alive and so that people not only can see it, but they can read about it. There's little museums, there's little plaques about things. So it's really a combination of everything, of art, of architecture, of history. And, I really think that people will be really surprised if they go on this tour.
Well, I'm fascinated about you coming from Chicago and then doing a Skyway tour, like going on a Skyway, like being able to do that and walk from building to building that way. When, Chicago has these skyscrapers and the architecture, did you connect with that coming from that city? Were there some similarities?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's another big Midwestern town, but what Minneapolis has that Chicago doesn't is the Skyway system. And believe me, I've been in the Windy City in winter and walking downtown, in the Loop, it's called, downtown Chicago, and you're walking and you're dealing with that wind and that harsh weather. And you're thinking, now I'm thinking, boy, it would have been nice to have had these Skyways in Chicago.
Exactly. That's what the first thing that I was thinking about when you first said the story, and I'm like, no way, man. I know she was sitting there going, why not? Why didn't we have this? So, but it's kind of cool. I mean, when you think about it, being able to do that, but then at the same time, those guys, you can see out, right? When you're walking from one building to the other. So you can still see the outside and the architecture on the outside, which is also really cool. And at a different level.
Yes, it is. It's wonderful. Yes, different levels. And then you go through areas like downstairs and through different corridors. And, then you come across some art and sculpture and you're like, wow, I didn't know this was here. And to me, all of that is phenomenal. Now, granted, I had a guide, which was wonderful, but you can find, walking tour guides, self-guided tours yourself, except I think that having a guide brings so much
Yeah.
more color and information to it. And then I don't have to be sitting there reading something as I'm trying to walk and observe at the same time.
Well, can we kind of talk about where Minneapolis is situated, right? So it's on that border, the Canadian border, but the Mississippi River, isn't that really kind of what made it all happen? Isn't that part of it? And when you go on a walking tour, they kind of give you this why people first got there and who, what, and where, right? Why did it become a city? And that's what I love about
Yeah.
these walking tours. And why did the architects come in? Because something was going on. Was it part of the river?
Well, it was the riverfront is, definitely where things uh, kind of got going because Minneapolis was once the flour milling capital of the world. And so the mighty Mississippi and all the trains and the boxcars were carrying all the grains from the plains. And so, it became quite the place for that. And I think that kind of put it on the map initially, I think, according to what I remember. And so now there is this very cool place called Mill City, which is right down there by the riverfront. And what they have done is they have taken this, the ruins of this mill, and they've made this incredible showpiece. And it's a museum where you can explore all these antique old milling equipment and these vintage advertising, and learn about the wheat farms and how important it was. And, inside, which is really cool, and this open air courtyard is they do a lot of concerts and events, but it's really a fascinating place. And the riverfront itself is wonderful. And you can walk along it and you can overlook the Mississippi on one side. You see the city skyline on the other. And, there's this place called Endless Bridge. It's a beautiful, beautiful architectural feature. And it goes from one side to the other, and you can also see the Guthrie there, the amazing, amazing world-renowned Guthrie Theater. And it's a great place to just walk. And after our tour, which that's where we ended it. And my husband, who was with me, we decided that we wanted to just kind of spend some more time walking. It was nice weather, and we just decided we wanted to spend some more time exploring the area because it really was picturesque, but it's also just kind of cool. You feel like you really are exploring history there.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Because just being able to, and the thing about doing a tour, you see these sites and then you kind of go, okay, I need to go back. Did you feel that during the tour? Like, I'm going to go back here. You've got your guide, you're
Absolutely.
asking questions, and they're like, dude, we need to go hang out here a little longer. It's such a great way to get to
Absolutely.
know a city. Ah,
And also some of these wonderful, big skyscrapers, they have cool restaurants inside. They have bars inside. They have really interesting things that, you want to go back and spend some time and, kind of soak it all up. And like I said, the art in them is just amazing. Like there's this one place called, it used to be the Old Farmers and Mechanics Savings Bank. It's now the Westin Hotel. And so this is this it's on the National Register of Historic Places, like a lot of these buildings are. But what they've done is they've kept a lot of the original aspects of the building. And they have the teller counter that was at the bank is now a bar.
oh,
And the safety deposit vault is now a wine cellar. So it was just like,
yes.
it's so neat the way they kind of repurposed these things, but allowed them to keep in the character of the architecture of what it used to be.
Okay, the Father of Waters is my thing. I'm serious. To me, that's my thing. But then look, I'm bringing this because look at the connection to New Orleans on the Jefferson Highway, because wasn't that statue first made for New Orleans in some way? Uh-oh. Now we're going to have a rivalry.
It's this massive sculpture. It's supposedly,
It's like
marble
Zeus,
that
you
came
know?
from Italy, and it was originally made for New Orleans, but that city at the time failed to come up with the money. So some
Uh-oh.
good folks from Minneapolis bought it. They moved it there in 1904, and all the elements of the sculpture fit because of the Mississippi River connection, all but one, which is the alligators, which you will not find in Minneapolis.
See, that blows my mind. Like there is still Nancy and I go and do all these roadside things as we travel. And El Paso, Texas has a alligator sculpture in the downtown district that it was
Yeah.
raining when we were going through. So I'm like, well, there's no point. So we're going to go back through, we will. And what are
Right.
alligators doing in El Paso? I don't know, but now I'm going to have to
Yeah.
investigate this, right? So, but so they didn't put the alligators in Minnesota, but this is what's so interesting is like the banking history of Minnesota, the big banks. I mean, we've been to some of the towns and cities in Minnesota, and the banks are like, I don't know, it's part of the culture is the bank. I don't know what, maybe it's the era and that they've kept the history and the Art Deco, like you talk about in your article about the Art Deco being such a big part of what is going on, the savings bank, like you were talking about. I've seen that in other ones too. So I find that interesting about the banks in Minnesota. I don't know what was going on, but they have a
I
thing.
think every big Midwestern city, I mean, Chicago's the same thing. Banks were the financial, center, and these skyscrapers were a lot of times built for financial institutions. And, oftentimes they became multi-purpose in terms of their use. And, now some hotels occupy them, or some, other businesses and restaurants and shops, and a range of different purposes now. But, they've somehow been able, at least in Minneapolis, to keep certain aspects of the building's history when they've, gone in there and either, have remodeled or added on or whatever. But, it to me, like I was going to talk about there's a public service center. It's called the Minneapolis Public Service Center. And this blew my mind, because I've seen a lot of art installations, but I've never seen anything like this. It was called Lines of Flight Human. And it looks like Morse code. It has all these dots and dashes, and I'm looking at it, I'm going like, what is this all about? And, it does tell you, and also Jessica did tell us that it really is inspired by human migration and the history to this region, and, about and also that it visualizes the U.S. Census demographic data. So it shows these woven bands that are created, and each band corresponds to the migration of a different population, and it shows how it gets denser and denser, and you can follow it, and it goes along the windows of this Skyway bridge, and it's fascinating to me that the art group that produced this, that they would have thought about this. It's combining human history to this area.
I love this. I think that's the coolest thing is about understanding the nomadic life, right? And
Absolutely.
then understanding who everyone is. And then, here we go from all these people moving, doing things, to the arts. You've got, oh my gosh, the courthouses too. Y'all, that I love the courthouses. I have a thing about courthouses, though I don't want to have to go to them. You know what I mean? I don't want to have, I don't need that kind of
but
anklet.
you know what?
Or bracelet.
Typically, the courthouses in a lot of towns are really historic,
Gorgeous.
and they're also very stately and beautiful buildings. And this one was built, I think, between 1887 and 1906. And it's really elegant, very, very handsome. Italian marble, stained glass. That's where Father of Waters is inside. But that is a beautiful, beautiful building. And then there's a beautiful clock tower that's on the City Hall, which is also, I think it was at the time the largest in the world. And so there's all these wonderful little aspects that I think if people are just walking around, they would miss.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, when you do a tour, you get to understand why the courthouse came in. Because when a courthouse comes into a town or a city, that means this is getting established. Stuff is going down. So if crime starts to rise up, right, and permits need to be done, then people are moving in, stuff's happening, it's shaking, it's rolling, let's do it, So that's kind of an interesting thing, in these historic courthouses to me are so gorgeous. Also, when I look back at the bank buildings, because the Minnesota, it was Owatonna that we were in, where this bank building is just spectacular. You go and it's got this plaza. I think
Right.
architecture was a big deal up there in
Yeah,
this amazing state. And at the
absolutely.
same time, you have this architecture that just it meant something. Yet in the meantime, you'll be at home going, look at all this snow. And I wonder if the architecture was to be showcased, like we're going to rise above the snow. You know what I mean? Like this way you will find us and see us. And it was prominence, it was wealth and um, progression in a community, right? But at the same time, this state has the most amazing nature and beauty and lakes. And I don't know, man, I'm kind of feeling like I need to go back now. I know we do, but when you think about this architecture, I don't know what it is about the Midwest and the architecture. People had time, maybe because it was snowing, to do so much work and intense thought. But I think the Midwest
I
wins in
think,
architecture. It does. Like, honestly,
well,
I,
I think, Minneapolis, I think Minneapolis, like Chicago. I mean, Chicago at the time, it's like Chicago's architecture is world renowned. And, they really didn't get going with incredible big buildings until after the Chicago fire when they had to rebuild.
hmm
And all these
right.
architects came and there was competitions to build the certain buildings. But I think, Chicago's always been kind of the big hub of the Midwest, and it still is. But, the cities that came out from branching out of there, Minneapolis, you've got,
Okay.
Cleveland, you've got Detroit.
Oh,
I
that's a
think
good
they
point.
all, they all
Yeah.
wanted to establish themselves as, as a city with a certain reputation, and so I think that it all kind of stemmed from there, and they've all made their own marks in their own way.
It's true. And then when you have this kind of architecture going in, it calls the arts, it calls the artists. Then the city says, y'all, we care, right? We're in the South, so I'm still saying y'all. Sorry, as we record this, it's true.
Yeah, no,
You
no,
know,
absolutely.
I'm
They
not a
say, yeah, they
Southerner, but
say,
my y'alls are there. But I feel like it's saying, hello, we care. We're going to have culture here,
yes.
and if,
And I think
it,
that the powers that be are very smart uh, to do that because Minneapolis is one of the most cultural cities in the United States. It's known for its arts, not only visual arts, but the theater and dance and so much. And they have so many different venues for the arts. But I mean, even in one of the buildings, they've got glasswork by Dale Chihuly, a world
mm,
recognized glass artist, and so they have incredible pieces that were handpicked or created for the purpose of the building. So when you walk in, you're looking at these incredible pieces. One of the ones that I love was the Capella basket in this Capella Tower. It's just insane. It's got like 10,000 circuit boards, and it's this huge basket that's beautiful, and it's hanging 70 feet in the air, and it's just in this glass walled atrium area. And you walk in and you're like, wow. I mean, if I
mm.
was going to work in a building like that, I'd be like so, I don't know, I'd be so pleased to walk in and at least see this incredible piece of artwork in there instead of something very just
Here's a
mundane or
dying
boring.
indoor plant that everyone complains
Yeah,
about watering.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, no,
right.
no, this is so true. I mean, I mean, art shapes everything and how we feel, how we express ourselves, how we feel like somebody thought about something that we feel, I mean, the arts are, don't get me started. That will be a whole other podcast. Anyway, so I'm going to twirl around and stay in the arts, but go to the Guthrie. Tell us about this theater because this is such a iconic place. And I think, again, looking at the Midwest, some of the most amazing artists come out of there. And when I say the artists, I mean actors, poets, painters, writers, photographers, musicians. And I think there is something about the winter that makes you huddle in and, architects, like I was
Yeah,
saying, that gives you this like, all right, I'm going to go stir crazy or I'm going to create something. And then they create amazing things. Like, thank you, Prince. I love you, Prince. But and my gosh, everyone, go back to the jazz of Prince. I'm not talking about just the nowadays kind of thing. Go back. Um, but the Guthrie, this is an iconic theater, and you got to go in and actually do a tour through there, right? You got to go in there?
Yeah, like I said, I've been there before. This time I went. I also went to a show. This time we did go to another show this time. But a lot of famous actors have worked at the Guthrie. It's been one of those places like, Jessica Tandy, Ian McKellen, Morgan Freeman, Elizabeth Banks. All these people kind of got their start at the Guthrie before heading to
Oh,
Broadway.
wow.
And there are still famous actors that come back and that work there. And I think seeing a performance there is a real treat, not only to see the quality of theater, which is extremely high, but also to get that full experience of the theater, because it's just this incredible space with these floor to ceiling windows, and it's just it has wonderful areas for. I think there's 3 state-of-the-art stages, and there's classrooms and lobbies and restaurants, and it to me it's really a special place. I think if anybody goes to Minneapolis and would like to see a theatrical performance of very high quality, the Guthrie is the place to go. And it's just the place. You can also walk in there and you can check it out on your own without having to have a ticket. You can go there and look at it on your own. But it's seeing a performance in one of the spaces to me, it just enhances the whole experience.
Well, I feel like we're going to have to call this segment Walking Minneapolis, because you did a walking tour, indoor, outdoor, because, you're doing, these skywalks, and there's so much art in there, right? And history, architecture, and everything. But at the same time, you ended out on the boardwalk, and we're going to go to the sculpture park next. But tell us about the boardwalk, because this is really cool too, because you have St. Anthony Falls that you can see.
Right. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful view of St. Anthony Falls. And this was the only natural major waterfall in the Mississippi River. And so named by a father, a priest, the first white person to see the waterfall back in 1680, and named it for his patron saint, Anthony of Padua. But it's just one of those places down by the Mississippi, and I always am attracted to water. So being down there on that boardwalk, locals like it as well. People walk down there, they ride bikes down there. It's a very picturesque area. And when you're standing inside the Guthrie at the top, and you're looking out, you can see the falls and the river, and it's glorious in the skyline. It's really, really spectacular.
Wow, this is amazing. So everyone, MinneapolisCityTours.com is where you want to go to book this kind of experience in downtown Minneapolis. And now we're going to go over to another walking experience, which is the Minneapolis Sculpture Garden, because this is all about outdoor art. But I know you saw flower power too, right?
Absolutely. This sculpture garden is also a really, really well-known attraction in Minneapolis. It is it's acres of it actually was one of the first public-private urban sculpture parks of its kind. There's 11 acres, and it's right in the heart of the city. And it's part across the street is the Walker Art Center, which is a wonderful art museum. But the sculpture park, you can walk in; it's free, and roam around, and treat yourself to a lot of eye candy, because that's what it is. And fascinating sculptures, very, very popular, open year round as well. A lot of highlights. There's so many I can't even begin to list them, but I think one of the most beloved piece there is really the standout, and it's called Spoon Bridge and Cherry by Klaus Oldenburg and his wife Kuzi van Bruggen. But you can't miss it, because it's this gorgeous, huge sculpture where there's this spoon that's like 6,000 pounds, and the cherry, and then the cherry stem acts like a fountain, which sprays into the bowl of the spoon and into this pond, and it really takes the center stage in this sculpture park. But I loved that. I absolutely adored it, and I think I stood there and took like oodles of pictures of it because it was just so astounding to me.
Well, also, I thought it was cool too. And that's like one of those roadside attractions, but it's like a high-end roadside attraction, right? And it wouldn't be a roadside attraction but that's this beauty
No.
of this kind of sculpture, right? But you also saw the love sculpture.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is also iconic in different places in the Midwest. I think we saw one of his sculptures in Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah, downtown,
Oh,
I
really?
believe.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I'm thinking back to but he has different versions. So, tell us a little bit
Yes.
about that in there because it's really cool to see because people I know you all see it on Instagram and Pinterest, and it's a famous look
Yes.
of love, this square LOVE, right? But this is iconic to be able to see this.
It's the artist is Robert Indiana, and he has displayed these assorted variations of this love in different cities around the world and around the country. And sometimes he paints them very colorfully. This one was made of a type of steel that's meant to look rusty, but doesn't require any kind of paint. But, it's very notable, and people usually are like, oh, I've seen that, or I've seen a picture of it, or I've seen it somewhere else. That one is very cool. And then, another one that is really interesting that I found was this horse skeleton that was like
Oh yeah.
It's made of wood. It's called Woodrow, and it's actually bronze though. It's been welded together, but it looks so much like wood that you have to go up there and look at it so close, and then realize and read it that it's not wood, it's bronze. But it has this really kind of weird stick figure horse kind of look to it. And supposedly, what I read, the artist named the piece after her father-in-law.
Well, there you go.
So whatever message that was, I don't know, but it was quite interesting. But there's a lot of them. There's one that's called Hand for Minneapolis, which they're using a lot of different fabrication techniques, and it really is spotlighting the manual labor that's involved in making everyday objects and the importance of human touch in our world that's really filled with automation and technology now. So that was kind of interesting.
I like the hair on the bell. That one, it's by Barry Flanagan, and to me, it's like it almost is like a woman's body on top of this giant bell, but it's a hair and lithe and like a dancer. It's because look at the shoes.
Yes,
the feet are like dancer shoes, and so just I don't know, angelic, graceful, and still at the same time. I'm a badass. You know what I mean? It
is.
That's one of my favorites.
It's a beautiful sculpture. Yeah. And it's this artist, Barry Flanagan, like you said, he got into sculpting hairs, and he puts them in all different types of states of motion and rest. And he kind of does tongue-in-cheek references. And, but this is, I looked him up, and, he's got all these different hair sculptures basically, and this one is atop this beautiful classical bell, and you're looking at something, you're thinking, oh, this is so creative, and where did this idea come from, and why is he interested in the hair, in hairs, and it's like, it makes
rabbits,
it makes
everybody,
you stop
hair rabbits. I need to tell everybody, hair rabbits, not hair like in human hair.
Right.
Just
There's
saying,
another one that's called
listening audience. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, there's another one that I found really kind of mystifying. It was called Without Words, and it had three distinct pieces. There was a sculpted head that was kind of modeled after an ancient sculpture of like an Egyptian queen. There was like a rumpled overcoat, and then there was a dress form. That the artist supposedly patterned after a dinner dress that belonged to her mother. But you're looking at this juxtaposition of these pieces, and you're thinking, what what could this mean? What could the
Yeah.
narrative be here? But I decided that, the fun is really in making up your own story to fit whatever it is that you see, and, let you be the interpreter of this, unless some artist gives you a very distinct explanation of this is what it is, this is why I did it, blah, blah, blah. But if not, and you're left with looking at this and, it's called Without Words, and you're thinking, okay, so what is this all about?
Oh,
How do these three things tie together?
well, I love this because I love what you said too, because I mean, we do art podcasts all the time and art history. And I remember being in school and there was a poem that we were to read and review and say what it meant. And I said my thing, and the teacher like took a ruler and smacked the desk and said, "That's not what it's about." I said, "Well, it is for me.
Oh,
No, this is what the
good.
poem meant." And I was like, "Oh, screw you. I'm out." Honestly, sorry about my tone there, but it's true because the arts are about, it's a co-creative process. It like the artist puts something on the table, the virtual table, and you take in what you can connect with. And then if it lingers, like this
Right.
is a piece. And everyone, Debbie's article is linked in the episode notes on this. I want you to see it. And also, let me give the link out to everyone so they can go to the museum, the Minneapolis Sculpture Museum, walkerart.org/visit garden, but walkerart.org, you'll find it. Um, this is so important because that's what art is about. It is about creating a connection, making you think, and the person standing next to you looking at this is going to have a different interpretation. For me, the way that jacket is, it almost reminded me of someone in
Mm.
the military that was lost during World War One or two. Um,
Mm.
just that does, and it means to me like someone was ready for you to come home for dinner and you didn't show because
Mm.
you were
Mm.
possibly gone and without words,
Interesting.
or you're having a
Mm.
dinner party and the person is there and doesn't talk, and you're the wife serving up this amazing feast with martinis, and you're the typical like that typical scenario of expecting the wife, so you know what I'm talking about because I'm looking at the figure. So there's all these different things, and that is the beauty of art because it makes us think and tap into our creativity. And if we don't have creativity, what are we? You know, we
Yeah.
need that. And this is so amazing. That is, I think it's my favorite because it makes me think. I'm going to be thinking about this all night now. I could probably come up with like 20 stories on this, right? Isn't that beautiful?
Absolutely.
Ah,
Yeah.
now,
Absolutely.
yeah, you've
Absolutely.
messed with my
So
head.
yeah, there's
Thank you so much, Debbie. Fire monkey. Yeah, yeah. She blew up the dinner.
yeah, no,
That's what Fire Monkey
it's
did. No,
it's that's the beauty of art, I think, and we all bring our own interpretations and perspectives to artwork, which makes it even more interesting and fascinating. And even when the artist knows what they've done and why they've done it, and they've kept it, they haven't been very overt in telling you what they've done or what it's all about. I think that that's really kind of cool because you can form your own opinion, and instead of being told that this is this and this is that, it may make you crazy like in trying to figure it out. But it's like, well, cool. So you've decided that this tableau means for you this is the story, this is the narrative for you, and that's there is no there's no wrong interpretation. It's what you decide for yourself.
yeah, take that, poet teacher. But but I want to say this in closing too. So, Nancy and I used to teach music. Nancy was an art teacher. I mean, we've been in the world of arts for years. And people would come up, and when I was a singer, right? They would come up and say, like, this is amazing. Like, they compliment me, and I'm very grateful because
Mm-hmm.
I was the shyest person, believe it or not, about it all, and still am about that. And they'd go, well, I couldn't carry a tune in the bucket was one of the things we always heard around music. And oh, for her, it was like, I couldn't draw a circle. Well, Nancy would go, well, then you're
Mm-hmm.
insane. You know, um, if you could, there's these things where people don't think they're creative. And so I think this is I'm going to have to do a whole podcast on this with some experts on this, but you just really made me think about this. As the viewers or the listeners, right? Or however engaging in a piece of art, right? Whether it's moving, dance,
exactly,
whatever it is co-creative. When you're reading a novel, you're seeing those characters and those scenes in your mind, and you are creating the colors, the faces. You've got a little help from the author, and authors oftentimes allow you to create the face or the person's physique. They're giving you some hints depending on the author. So remember, you are creative as someone who is engaged in the arts. That is your form of creativity. I don't think anyone on this planet does not have a form of creativity. We all do, but it's how we do it. As someone that is supporting and engaging in the arts, you're allowing the art to be created. You're ingesting it and creating it as a co-creator. And if you weren't there, the other part wouldn't be either. So it's very important.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Absolutely.
You made me. Oh, that is so true, right? We've got to do something on that, the creative science, right? Because it's true.
Absolutely.
People engage, go to the sculpture gardens, go take a walk downtown like what you did in the Minneapolis outdoor, and you're taking in the sculptures. You're looking at Mary Tyler Moore, who I just say, hey, she's Mary. I don't mean that sacrilegious in any way. Mary, because she made you smile. Wasn't her smile the most important thing on the planet? Mary Tyler Moore's smile,
She was terrific. I mean, she definitely, I think if you need to say is, I think for a lot of people, she really kind of put Minneapolis there on the map for a lot of people who weren't really aware of it, but they were watching this TV show, and she's there, and every time she's tossing her hat up and into the sky, and it's like that's the way she throws her hat in the air, and that's the way she opens the TV show, and that sitcom I think really put the city on the map in a modern sense for that.
And a global.
There's a wonderful sculpture of her.
Yeah, I knew about it from South Africa. That's how I knew about Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Growing up in South Africa, that's how I knew. Is that there's that one in Cincinnati too? The radio station in Cincinnati, was it a radio station?
Yes.
That's how we knew.
Yeah.
Those things, and it makes you smile.
Of course.
So hey, the arts rock, y'all.
Yep.
So I've still got the y'alls. I can't shake it. I think I did that on the last podcast with you. Can't shake the y'alls. Happens as soon as we cross over into the Southeast, the y'alls come out of my mouth. But we spent a lot of time in Louisiana, so I get like a pass. But anyway, thank you, Debbie, so much. Fire Monkey. Everyone, go check it out on blendradioandtv.com are the links to Debbie's articles, but they're in the episode notes too. So check them out there. And Debbie is with us on Big Blend Radio every fourth Tuesday with Global Adventures, with Debbie Stone, and on all kinds of other podcasts that we do on Big Blend Radio. So you can keep up with her at blendradioandtv.com, her stories, and nationalparktraveling.com. Happy travels, Fire Monkey. You stay safe and have fun, and come back and report.
All right, and the same to you. Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Big Blend Radio's Global Adventures Show with travel writer Debbie Stone. Debbie is here every fourth Tuesday. You can keep up with us at bigblendradio.com.